Alright, so I'm gonna get involved in the drama mill yet again because recently something happened which I think is extremely fascinating and interesting. For the record, if I talk a little funny in this video, it's because my right ear is stuffed up. I don't think it's infection or anything. I think it's just earwax buildup. But anyway, so it's like my voice is echoing around in my head. So recently, in Praise of Shadows, the horror YouTube channel uploaded like a 3-hour video called Bad Conservative Horror Movies. I had it open on a tab, but then by the time I got around to watching it, it was deleted. It had been made private. And I was like, wow, why is this, right? Because I thought it would just be about, you know, run, hide, fight or whatever, you know, whatever bad conservative, I guess it's more like a bad conservative thriller, but whatever. I thought it would just be about that. But In Praise of Shadows has a whole section in this video, which has since been re-uploaded. This is the only part that's available anymore, which is a shame because the other sections might have actually been good. It is just about Wendigoon, and like tries to say that Wendigoon is a boogaloo boy and Wendigoon's like a far-right terrorist and stuff. And I find this really interesting as someone with an actual stake in like Wendigoon, because he covered my fucking ARG. Hypnagogic Archive. I don't know, about a year ago I made a video called Wendigoon and the Reactionary Mindset, or maybe it was like 6-8 months ago, I forget. Time is meaningless at this point. And I basically just said like, yeah, you know, Wendigoon's position as like a Christian is kind of cringe. I deny that, you know, he's like a racist or anything. I don't think that's the case. I don't think a case can really be made for that. But I do think ultimately it would be better if prominent media figures were less Christian and more like black, Hispanic, LGBTQ. I don't really get what kind of perspective is being given by Wendigoon. Not to say he's a bad media analyst or anything. For the record, I do think In Praise of Shadows is a better horror media analyst. His videos are more well-researched, they're more comprehensive, they clearly have a better understanding of like the history of horror, and they go a lot of places that Wendigoon's videos honestly don't. And my main gripe with Wendigoon isn't that like he's racist or anything. It's that in some of my stories in Hypnagogic Archive that he read from, he deliberately omits the parts where I use the Lord's name in vain, where I say like Jesus or something, where one of the characters says, oh God, you know. I kind of find this cringe because it's an act of atheist erasure. Like, as an atheist, and as a proud, open atheist, I will use the Lord's name in vain as much as I fucking want. In fact, many of my stories openly mock the idea of there being a God. I find the idea fucking hilarious and very interesting and ripe for exploration in horror and sci-fi. And I don't know, something just strikes me wrong about cutting that out and being like, oh, that doesn't happen. I feel like to be a competent media analyst, you have to be willing to say fuck, you have to be willing to say shit, you have to be willing to get your hands dirty. Admittedly, Wendigoon does try his best. I mean, he's watched some, you know, some fucked up shit. You know, he has his whole disturbing movie iceberg with the Cannibal Holocaust and a Serbian film and whatever on there. And I kind of have to wonder, you know, how do you call yourself like a good Christian boy when you're constantly watching all this depraved shit? I mean, doesn't the Lord have something to say about this? Doesn't God have, you know, rules against this? Like, you're not supposed to be watching all this depraved schlock. I think it'd be easier for like an atheist to do that, because atheists don't believe that there is any God, and therefore no reason not to watch like Mondo or gore films or whatever. But on the other hand, admittedly, In Praise of Shadows also engages in self-censorship sometimes, like in his video documenting the history of scary clowns, for instance. There's a segment about the Victor Selva movie Clown House, and he basically just says, I'm not going to talk about this, you know, because Victor Selva is a fucking weirdo. And, you know, that's, like, more okay, I think, not to talk about the movie made by a fucking freak, as opposed to just, like, cutting out sections of your video that would offend the Christian sensibilities of the, oh, well, yeah, we can watch a Serbian film, but we can't say, oh Jesus, because that's blasphemy right there. I just find it a little goofy. I do think a very good case could be made that Wendigoon doesn't really know what he's doing. He's not the most skilled or the most adept when it comes to media analysis, and In Praise of Shadows is obviously a much better and more comprehensive media analyst. His videos have more editing, they have better structure, like way better writing. Like Wendigoon just kind of goes, isn't this funny? Oh man, let's talk about this complex topic with the media analysis of like for freaking 17-year-old. Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, there's a place for that. His video on Hypnagogic Archive doesn't have to be like the most deep or anything, even though there's a lot of thematic complexity to it. It's okay, you know, he doesn't have to be a genius. But I just find this drama really interesting because In Praise of Shadows and Wendigoon kind of form two pillars, like a very interesting dichotomy of horror analysis. On the one hand, you have this very far left type analysis. On the other hand, you have this kind of cornpone Christian type analysis. And I don't know, something about it, I just find it weird that there isn't just like a good fucking horror analysis anymore. All the horror's gotta be politicized. I think this is kind of sad. I hope there's just like a nice, competent horror analysis channel that maybe rises from the ashes of this feud. And it's just like, oh, you know, maybe we can just get like a nice video going over the Halloween or whatever. Not that I'm even a centrist, I consider myself a leftist, but I really think this constant infighting is just getting boring at this point. I do think the cases that In Praise of Shadows brings up against Wendigoon are pretty weak. Like, I don't think Wendigoon started the Boogaloo Boys. I think that's, like, not true. But on the other hand, I think it's really funny how, like, Zane Whitener in Praise of Shadows calls out Wendigoon, or, like, wearing a Hawaiian shirt, when literally in the video he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and it's like, oh, Wendigoon's a Southerner, and then Zane Whitener's a Southerner from everything I'm aware. You know, I'm a Denverite, so it's like two Southerners fighting with each other over, you know, who's the more like morally clean, and like you both live on land that used to have slaves on it, so like I don't even get what the argument is here. It's just really counterproductive and really bizarre. I didn't even know that the video had this. Again, I just thought it was about bad conservative horror movies, not bad conservative horror analysts or whatever, or like reviewers. But yeah, I do think it's kind of clickbaity of In Praise of Shadows to include a segment on Wendigoon when that's not even the subject of the video. But on the other hand, I do think there is a lot to criticize Wendigoon for. Not that he's a far-right extremist or anything, I don't think that's the case, but definitely that he does contribute to sort of a warped view of horror, especially considering so much of horror is like openly gay, you know, black, like Blackula is one of my favorite horror movies ever. And I just feel like we could use some more diverse voices in horror, and not just like the white crowd, you know, not even me necessarily, just like, you know, there's some good, I'm sure there's some good horror analysis videos out there. They just don't get the views. It's really interesting. So yeah, between the two, I guess I'd have to say In Praise of Shadows is my favorite. Like, if In Praise of Shadows had covered Hypnagogic Archive when that shit was popping off, I'd be way more into it. But as it stands, Wendigoon, you know, basically made my entire career for me. Or didn't really make my entire career. In my older video, I do make the case that Wendigoon's audience is full of far-right reactionary extremists who couldn't accept that I was autistic or asexual. Not him, and I don't believe that people are responsible for the sort of audience they cultivate necessarily, but his audience is full of, like, complete wackos who just, like, worship and idolize him to an unhealthy extent. And that's not necessarily his fault. I do think, you know, In Praise of Shadows probably has just as many unhinged fans to the opposite end. Anyway, I just find this some really interesting drama because, on the one hand, in Praise of Shadows videos, I've looked up to for a long, long time, and I think they're good videos. They're the type of content that this site honestly needs. They're well researched. They're very informative. They talk about stuff that I wouldn't necessarily consider. I really like this video on all the witch movies, which is deleted for whatever reason now, I guess because it had nudity or whatever. But that one was great. A very comprehensive breakdown of like every witch type movie since like, you know, the dawn of cinema. It's very well researched. Wendigoon's videos, while I like him because he covered Hypnagogic Archive, and I think he could be like so much better if he just kind of applied himself and did a little bit more like research and in-depth like discussion of shit. He doesn't really have a thematic complexity. I think that's why he's more popular and more appealing. He just kind of talks his stuff with this casual, you know, off-the-cuff type demeanor. It's very chilly and all that. But, you know, I think he could improve. I don't, like, hate his content. Like, his Hypnagogic Archive video is okay. I'll say that. It's okay. You know, he butchers the text a lot, and he deliberately obscures the atheist sentiment, you know, which is endemic to all my work, really. I'm a big hardcore atheist. I pray to the void. It's just very bizarre to see these two back and forth. And, like, now, apparently Wendigoon's gonna sue for slander or something. Or, I guess in Praise of Shadows, deleted the video because I was scared of getting sued for slander. I think that's kind of a coward move to delete your video just because you're scared. Like, if you're gonna come out and say this shit, if you're gonna say that like someone's a big racist or the founder of the Boogaloo Boys or whatever, fucking stand by it. You know, leave the video up or make it available on Patreon. You know, don't just like fucking erase it from the internet and pretend like you never said it. I do think that's coward behavior. I generally don't delete anything I've ever said. I don't even try to, because even the stuff I said way back, you know, that's when I was like 17, so it reflects a different side of myself. I don't delete anything I say, because I'm not embarrassed of anything I've ever said. I think everything I've ever said is just a reflection of who I am. I do think it's kind of cowardly to delete your video. And it could have been a good video outside the Wendigoon part. It could have been like, you know, freaking interesting and actually about like some bad conservative horror. I wish I'd seen that video. It seems like all the time, just like videos get deleted, and it's so sad because like, you know, they do take work and effort to make, and it's like I want to see this video, but oh well. At least the Wendigoon part's still up, which is fascinating. It's a fascinating little episode unto itself, and a very compelling example of why like this insular drama is just tearing horror analysis apart. I want to see some good horror analysis. That's all I'm interested in. I don't care if it's right, left, whatever the fuck. I just want to see projects like Hypnagogic Archive and shit. You know, other smaller ARGs, for fuck's sake. Let's see them get some coverage and actual thematic analysis. Not that I'm necessarily equipped to do it, but I'm sure someone is, from an interesting perspective and a well-researched perspective. And I think both in Praise of Shadows and Wendigoon at this point are just kind of actively gnawing away at the foundation of horror study. And I think that's too bad, because there could be some great frickin' analysis made. There's interesting stuff in the horror and sci-fi arena being made every day. Anyway, yeah, that's just my perspective as a smaller creator down here on the food chain, whose work just gets picked apart and analyzed by the big fish up top. My labor just gets exploited constantly. That's how I see it. Anyway, yeah, fascinating caper. I'm going to keep updated on this one. This one's got me thrilled. Okay, catch you around. Spadash.